We'll now call the May board meeting of the County Commissioners to order. And I'll ask if you have a cell phone, if you will, please put it on vibrate or cut it completely off, whichever you prefer. This time I ask that you stand. Commissioner Langley will lead in the invocation, and Commissioner Evans will lead in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us pray. Eternal God, our Father, we are grateful that you have allowed us to come together one more time to do the business of your people. Touch our hearts and minds, God, that we may make wise and prudent decisions, that we will do what's best for your people. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'll ask if any of the commissioners has a conflict of interest as it relates to any of the items on the agenda tonight. Hearing none, we'll move to do the approval of the agenda.
So move.
Got a motion to approve the agenda. Is there a second? Got a second? All those in favor, raise your right hand.
I raise my hand.
Okay. Unanimous.
Do you mind if we move the Davenport up front?
Yes. We'll do that. But since it was already on here,
Thank you.
it's in the approval. Brian had asked if we would move the refinancing of the school bonds to number one under items for decision so that our guests could head back to Virginia. Okay, we have no public comments tonight. We're down to items for consent.
Motion to approve.
Got a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to pull item number 12, the audit, for a question.
Okay, we'll pull item number 12 to items for decision, and since that won't hold anybody back, we'll move that to item number 10. No, I'm sorry. Item number 13. Okay. All those in favor of approving the consent with that one change, raise your right hand. All those opposed? 6-1. Okay, we're down to items for discussion. The first one is the efficient use of school buildings. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, we've had this item in front of us before, and to give the public the background of what I'm referring to, we have some school buildings that are full. We have several school buildings that are as much as half full. Northside High School being one of these buildings. We have growth toward the center of the county around Washington and Chocowinity, and we have schools that have considerable free space in them in terms of student seats at Chocowinity, Northside, and other schools. Maybe Northside Elementary would probably be the only other ones. But this is what I'm saying is based on a study that was done by the architect who did a lot of the school designs about 4 or 5 years ago. And the study is in a blue book, so I call it the Blue Book Study. The Blue Book Study said that we had about 9,000 seats in Beaufort County that 100% would meet the State Department of Education criteria to put a student in, and that we had 7,000 students. And since that study, we have fewer students in the system than we had then. So I'm fearful that there is a movement, and my reason for bringing this up for discussion, and I'd like to hear how the other commissioners feel about this, so I'll put a question to them when I finish this preamble, and that is, the efficient use of our schools means that we should find a way to move some students into the empty seats in these schools. Now, you get accused of all kinds of things when you start talking about this. I'm talking about something that has been shown that it works, is when you move the whole class and all those students in X grade, whatever grade it is, that have been at school together and that know each other, when you move the whole class, you have very few problems. When you start splitting classes and separating friends from friends, you can have some problems. That's not the issue here. The issue is 2,000 empty seats in the school system is 2 schools at $12 or $14 million a school. Okay? So I'm fearful that the school board is going to come to us and start telling us that we need to build some new schools toward the center of the county, while the schools that are not full are going to continue to have their enrollment go down. And I just wondered if there's any other commissioner that wanted to have a statement about this.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I'm in favor of building a new school on the south side of the river and doing away with the 3 schools there in Chocowinity and the one in Aurora, building a K through 8. And I believe by closing those schools down, the amount of energy cost that they have and the maintenance that's is taking place and is going to continue to take place, that we could pay for the school out of that. And I'll have facts and figures on that shortly.
Well, this is the kind of discussion that we need to be having, because I would very much like to see facts and figures that would show if you can justify making a $14 million investment based on just electricity and maintenance. That's going to be very interesting to look at. And I hope it's produced by the school board, by somebody that we can believe what they say.
Produced by the school board.
The point in this is, in order to do a $14 million school building, you're going to need to do a school bond. You're going to need to do another bond, and that means the taxes are going to go up to pay for this. The efficient use of the seats that we have in the system would tell us that all we have to do is to draw a few lines and reassign some students, and we don't have to spend any money, and we don't have to raise anybody's taxes.
Well, we've got the software that has already been looked at, and if you were to redistrict Washington High School and Northside, you would have to come up. This is what the software said. You would have to come up to Old Bath Highway and send those kids at Old Bath Highway to Northside. Or you could come back around and pick up River Road, and you really have your hands full in.
Well, has this study's been produced?
Don and I talked about it, yeah.
Well, Don, I'd make a request tonight, Mr. Manager. Would you ask the school superintendent to produce the study that Commissioner Brinn is referring to?
I'd be glad to.
I didn't say it was a study. I said he has
Backing
software
up now, you're
that
backing
would predict where the district lines were at.
Well, I got software that says otherwise.
Okay, we got Commissioner Buzzio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The DPI, the Department of Public Information, did do a study on classrooms and seats, and they came up with that there was 2,100 seats empty. The problem with that, though, and then there was a height study, said that we only have 1,100 seats that are actually not being used. The 4 schools where the majority of these seats are is Aurora, Southside High School, Northside High School, and Northeast Grammar School. These other 1,000 seats that are out there could be empty. However, those classrooms are being used for exceptional students. Advanced college degree, you may only have 6 or 7 students or 10 students in that class, and there may be 20 seats in there. Advanced calculus, again, you're not using all the seats in that classroom, so they're counted in the DPI study, but they're not counted in the height study. Reading recovery, again, be a minimum number of students using a whole classroom, and second language students, just to name a few. So when you really begin to look at it, you're talking about maybe 1,000 seats that aren't being properly utilized. Now, this, to me, is a school board issue, and they have to address this issue, and they should be discussing this issue. I would agree with what Commissioner Brinn is saying, is that if you're going to start redistricting, we've got to look carefully at these lines, and you're talking about now moving children, young children, from Chuckawinity area out to Aurora. It's a 45-minute bus ride. You're talking about moving children from Washington to Southside High School. You're talking about redistricting maybe up to Slatestone, which is right outside the front of Washington High School, and moving those students to Northside High School. So this is not an easy solution. And I would leave this up to the educators and the school board to come up with something and then have discussions with us. But I can't see it reversed where we're telling them what they should do. Because just imagine the impact that this is going to have on students and families in this county. We're a large land county, minimum population, cut by a river. So when we hear these numbers thrown around of 2,000 here and 1,000 here, we got to be careful what we're actually talking about. And we're not just counting seats, because these classrooms are being used. If you look now at, I'll briefly mention this, the legislative body in Raleigh has come up with a nice unfunded mandate about classroom size. They didn't talk to anybody from the education field. Now, they're giving us a 2-year moratorium, but they want to lower classroom size. Well, this county doesn't have any empty classrooms. You may be talking $1 million. You may have to fire 30 teachers or something. Well, maybe we can pitch tents out there. So this is not an easy issue that needs to be discussed, yes, by this board, but mainly by the Board of Education. And the impact it's going to have, these two issues, on this county within 2 years. We could be talking a lot of money. And just to say we're going to move students all over the place is not the solution. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, I'm gonna let them, I don't want to say that, I'm gonna let them school board members take care of their business.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if there's no one else, I want to ask Commissioner Buzzio if he can produce the DPI study for us, and the manager to work with him in getting that study so we can have it. I'd like to see it.
I got orders from the school board.
You referred to a specific study, sir,
That's it,
and I
DPI
hope that
study.
you can produce the facts instead of your opinion.
It's not my opinion, it's facts, Mr. Commissioner.
Well, then the school board will be able to verify this with a written report. Mr. Chairman, would you please make that request? Or Mr. Manager, excuse me. I call him Mr. Chairman. Well, we need it. If you're going to refer to a study, you know, the Blue Book study is out there. It's real. It's 2,000 seats. It's not 1,000 as referred to. But if there's a DPI study, you know, we're going through the muddying of the waters that we went through the last time the county got into the school bond issue, which is how we got those new schools that are built in these places that we can't use them. Guess what? We left it up to the school board to decide. And the school board overran a $33 million bond issue by $8 million, and that's how we're where we are, and it wasn't that long ago. I'm trying to see that we have an efficient use of our buildings without burdening our taxpayers who are already burdened with taxes. So the study, I think we need the study.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mr. Mitchell, this Blue Book study that you're talking about, what year was it done?
About 45 years ago.
Does it include, when they done the Blue Book study, does it include that we had early college? Now we have charter schools? Is all that?
Well, what the study did was the study counted the certifiable seats within the system. There are really more seats than what the study named, and they came up with, in round numbers, real close to 9,000 seats. And then it's real easy. You just take the number of students that you have in the system, which is 7,000. Then we have less than 7,000 now. That's basically what the study did, but it showed the basis for how they decided what was a seat and where the seat was and how it met the state standards. So it was a scientific study that was done by an architect who designed school buildings. So we don't have to worry about having a phony report, and that report is still valid the reason it's still valid is, number one, we've got less than 7,000 students in the schools today, and number two, we haven't built onto any schools, so, you know, the floor plans haven't been changed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's it.
For the benefit of the public, we're having a joint meeting on Wednesday with the school board to discuss the budget for 17 and 18. The only comment that I would make, if you look at the enrollment numbers over the last 5 years, it's basically flat at 7,000 students and a little bit of a drop in that. So I think the main problem we have is we've got the same enrollment and the schools are in the same place, but we've allowed for transfers to different schools, and that's filled some of it. And I think, according to the Washington Daily News, at the last meeting, I think that they've, once they get to 95% on the enrollment of the school, they cut out the transfers. So,
Right.
but no one, unless the school board has mentioned it to each one, you individually, nobody has asked the chairman for an additional school to be built anywhere yet.
Me either.
So, anyway, let's go to item number 2, the Finance Committee update. Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Finance Committee did hold its first meeting on March 28th. The committee members that were present were Chairman Waters, Commissioner Brinn, Brian Alligood, and myself. Since this was our first meeting, the first item of business was reviewing the committee charter and discussing the purpose for the committee. We also discussed the meeting agenda format for future meetings. After that, I did a 6-month review of the financials for informational purposes for the committee. We reviewed the proposed audit contract with Carr, Riggs, and Ingram for this year's audit services. The committee was comfortable in moving forward with that contract by bringing it to the Board of Commissioners for approval tonight. That was placed on the consent agenda, and that has been moved for discussion or decision later. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about that. I did inform the committee that I've been notified by the Department of Revenue that we have been chosen for a sales tax audit for fiscal years 2014, 2015, and 2016. We have sent them all the requested reports that they asked for. I'm waiting to hear back from them. I expect that they'll be on site to do that audit in the next probably 6 to 8 weeks. The committee reviewed travel expenses for the board and for the county manager for the first quarter of 2017. The next item was choosing a spokesperson for the committee, and unfortunately, I drew the short straw on that one, so that's why I'm speaking tonight. After that, we discussed an opportunity to refinance the 2008 general obligation school bonds, which the county would be able to save an approximate $140,000 over the next 11 years. There was a consensus among the committee members to take advantage of that bond refunding, and it is on your agenda for later this evening for a decision. We do have our consultant from Davenport with us, Mitch Berguglio. All right. And he and Brian will be going into more detail, and they're happy to answer any questions you might have about that. The final item was a discussion about establishing an employee fraud hotline. Brian is gathering more information and costs to bring back to the Finance Committee at our next meeting about that item. The next Finance Committee meeting will be held in this room on Tuesday, June the 20th at 3:00 p.m., and everybody's invited to attend. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my report for the Finance Committee.
Any questions of Anita?
Did you say that?
That date is June the 20th. It's a Tuesday at 3:00.
Any questions, comments for Anita?
She's done pretty good to draw the short straw.
She sure did.
Thank
We knew that when we chose her. Okay, we're down to item number 3, the facility rental and security fees. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you're aware, on occasion, we get requests for the use of our county-owned facilities, meeting rooms, things like that, by public and outside groups to use for meetings or other similar events. Currently, we don't have a uniform county policy for use of those facilities. Some of our departments have policies, but we don't have a uniform county policy regarding that. And we don't have a policy that addresses whether a fee is charged to recover costs associated with that. One of the items that we'd like to talk to you about is the courthouse facilities. As you're aware, when those are used after hours, the security presence is not there. We have an opportunity to use the sheriff's office. They have an existing program where their officers will work what they define as extra duty for events and things like that. It is at $25 an hour, and that is handled directly through the sheriff's office with the individual that's requesting that service. So part of that would be if we're going to hold events at the courthouse after hours, or we don't have our contract security folks in place, it'd be our recommendation to you that we would require those folks using it after hours to contract with the sheriff's office to provide that security. It would be one deputy who would open the door, who would be available to make sure that folks aren't coming and going and that people are where they're supposed to be, and then close up and sweep do a security sweep of the area before they leave so that we don't have any issues. If we're going to have security at the courthouse, we need to maintain security at the courthouse. So we're available, if the board wants us to draft a policy to bring back to you regarding that, and whether you want to start charging a fee, if you want us to look around and see what fees are being charged for use of facilities, if you'd like for us to do that, or if you'd rather say, no, I don't want to charge for use of the facilities, but I do want you to put a uniform policy in place, we can do that as well. But also, we would appreciate your consideration of the courthouse piece. Now, I will tell you, somebody may mention it, but there's a statute, 16399, that requires that schools and public buildings be available at no cost besides custodial and utility fees, which a security fee I would consider to be a type of a custodial fee, especially for the courthouse. That is permitted to be used at no cost by political parties that are defined by GS 16396 for the express purpose of an annual or biannual precinct meeting and county and district conventions. So you can't charge those groups to use it outside of a reasonable custodial or utility fee, which, like I say, if they're using the courthouse, I would assume that we would couch that as a security or a custodial fee for that facility. So I don't think you'd be in violation of that, but would appreciate your direction on how you want us to proceed on that.
Comments?
Question, I mean, when you start doing these things, are you going to require people to use it to furnish insurance?
That would be up to the board. I mean, typically, I'm not sure that people do. If they were
Some people, when you start doing that, they require you to have some kind of coverage. I mean,
you could.
If I go over there in the courthouse to a hallelujah meeting and fall down steps, somebody gonna take care of me. So I mean, but I'm just asking, is that one of those things that you're gonna put in place?
We certainly could. I mean, some folks do that, and I think one of the policies we looked at said that you had to have you had to name the county as an additional insured on your policy.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that Brian and staff go ahead and do a feasibility study on it, find out whether how much it should be if we do charge, and I would like to see it no charge at all, just my own personal opinion, but I'd like for that, put that in the form of motion.
How about if we just do it by consent, because it's under items for discussion? I mean, is anybody opposed to?
I'm opposed to doing it under consent. I'm not going to agree to do it.
Well, are you opposed to him exploring the idea?
Yeah.
Checking with fees, checking
Yes.
around?
Yes.
You are? Okay, we'll move it to the next meeting, and we'll vote on it since it's under items for discussion. We're down to the budget calendar reminder. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have a list of the budget the budget dates. Just a reminder of those coming up for you. There's a special called meeting on May the 15th in which we will present the budget. And then you start on the 22nd and 23rd, 25th, and the 30th on your budget workshops. And then we're anticipating that you would finalize the budget on June the 1st. I did have one item for you. There was a question regarding videotaping the budget meetings. We did that last year. It was a little over $800 to do that, and just wanted the board's direction on whether you wanted that taped this year or not, or those meetings taped this year or not.
I think the public should have the right to refer to that. The meetings this year, this is the first year I've been on this board that we have doing a jam up like we're doing, because normally the budget process starts about 2 months before. We're starting it this year, and it's spread out over a longer period of time, so the filming of the meetings, the public gets to see what's going on. This year, within about a 2-week period, we're having like 5 meetings. You can't possibly get them up for the public to see what's going on, but the public does need to have that reference if they want to have it, as to who said what in the budget meetings.
Just a quick response to that. This is the same budget schedule typically that we followed last year as well. So.
Well, last year's budget schedule wasn't a good budget schedule either. If you recall, I did not participate in the budget last year. The board relieved me simply because of the way the budget schedule was done, and the board was not willing to make a commitment to reduce taxes on anything. So, you know, they're not going to release me this year, and I understand that. So I'm going to be in there swinging. But the public needs to see what their commissioners are doing and who is raising their taxes.
Well, Mr. Richardson, if you ask to be excused, I'm going to suck at the motion to excuse you. I guarantee you that.
I don't want to be excused this year.
He's got to make sure he stays awake.
Is there anybody opposed to doing the video? Okay.
Fine with me.
Fine with me.
Pursue that, Katie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just one additional item, if you wouldn't mind. There are a couple things that I'd like to present to you, or at least talk to you about. You know, we have an opportunity every once in a while to celebrate some really good things in this county. And we obviously, unfortunately, we don't take that opportunity, and we need to do that. One of the things that occurred last week, and you read about it in the paper, and we appreciate the Washington Daily News covering that, was the certification of Beaufort County as a certified work-ready community. 2 of our commissioners were there to accept that award. This is really a big deal for Beaufort County. There are a lot of folks that work really, really hard on putting that program together. Just a couple pieces of that. It is a community. It provides a community-based framework that links workforce development to education. It aligns with the economic development needs of the communities, the regions, and the states, and it matches individuals to jobs based on their skill levels. This was a program. It took 2 years to put in place. There was a committee that was made up of representatives from the Chamber of Commerce, from Economic Development, an elected county official, an education representative from the school system, a community college representative, and a workforce development representative. Lou Stout from the community college essentially headed that committee up. And again, it took them about 2 years worth of work to do that. But what this does is this signifies that the county and its partners are working hard to make sure that we have a workforce that is ready to go to work. The partners involved in this, Beaufort County Schools, Washington Beaufort County Chamber of Commerce, the Committee of 100, Region Q Workforce Development Board, the NC Works Career Center, Economic Development, the community college, and over 62 local businesses and industries that signed on as part of this, because that was part of the process in which they had to go through. They had to get local businesses and industries to sign on, and they had over 62 of those. And then over 1,800 individuals have already received their career readiness certificate. So this is really a big, big deal for Beaufort County, and something that really needs to be celebrated. So I wanted to bring that in front of you and say that, because there are a lot of folks who work really, really hard to do that. The second item I'd like to bring to you is something regarding safety awards. As you recall, this board authorized us last year to hire a risk manager, and we introduced her to y'all, and Miss Jennifer Banks, and she's in the back, and asked Jennifer if she'd be here tonight because I want to publicly recognize her and our departments for the very hard work that they've done over this last year. Every year, the Department of Insurance holds a safety awards program. And it's a safety awards banquet. And this year, there were several of our departments that received the first-year gold award for safety. And that criteria is that the rate of days away from work or job transfer or restrictions that are placed on employees must be a minimum of 50% below industry average. So they look at what the industry average is for us, and you got to be 50% below that. So we were presented certificates. Jennifer went and represented the county at that banquet. So just to let you know, again, this is one of those things that we need to celebrate because safety is a big deal for us. It's a big deal for all of our businesses, and creating that culture where you take the time and you do things safely. So the first year gold awards were to the Animal Control Department, the Department of Social Services, the Health Department, EMS and Emergency Management, Public Works, and the administrative offices for Beaufort County. So that is a really good thing, and I want to commend Jennifer and all her hard work, and our departments have worked really hard to put programs in place and make sure that our folks are safe, because our desire is that when you come to work for the county, you go home that afternoon the same way you came to work, and everybody goes home with all the same fingers and toes, and nobody has any safety issues. So we appreciate all their hard work and just want to say thank you for that dedication. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, and I think we have most of the department heads here. I'm going to ask you to stand, and we'll just recognize you if you a department head, and if you will stand up. And Jennifer, you stand up too. Thank you very much for the job you do each day. Okay. We've moved item number 9, the refinancing of the school bonds, up to the first item under discussion. And for your reference, that's page 393 if you want to follow along. So, Brian, I'll turn it over to you and a representative from Davenport.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As you'll recall, at your regular meeting on April the 3rd, you authorized Davenport and Company to issue RFPs to financial institutions regarding the refinancing of the Series 2008 school bond general obligation bonds. That process has been completed. There is a summary of that process, and the bids are included in your packet. Mr. Mitch Bergoglio, who is the Senior Vice President. We actually thought Ted was going to be here, but we're lucky to have Mitch. Mitch is not out of Virginia. He's actually out of the Charlotte office, so he probably has a longer ride than Ted would have had going north. So I appreciate you moving that forward for him tonight. But he is here tonight and answering those questions. In your agenda package, you have for introduction and consideration the following items, and we have to read those. A resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Beaufort, North Carolina, making certain statements of fact regarding the proposed bond issue. And then number 2, the bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,750,000 general obligation refunding school bonds of the County of Beaufort, North Carolina. Mitch will go through the pieces of that and talk about the bidding process. Also included in your packet is the sworn statement of debt by the CFO and the statement of estimated interest amount on general obligation bonds by the CFO. So I'll let Mitch kind of run through that and answer any questions you may have, and then we can move forward.
Great. Well, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, thank you for having me this evening. As Brian said, in your packets, there's a summary memo prepared from Davenport. I may just quickly walk you through that. I won't go through all the details, but orient you to that and let you know what we did. So, as Mr. Alligood said, we have been working with staff on a potential refinancing for the 2008 general obligation bonds. And in order to further evaluate that opportunity, we distributed an RFP to over 50 national, regional, and local banking institutions. Reached out to all the bidders, answered any questions they may have, and as part of that process, the county received 9 responses to the RFP, which is a very good response level. People were interested in lending the county money and helping you out with your general obligation bond refinancing. I know sometimes you hear over 50 and we only got 9, but there's a lot of times where we only get a couple, 2, 3, 4 responses to RFP. So 9 is a good level of responses to receive on this RFP, indicates good interest in the county, and the county certainly, the GO, has a good credit for you all. Of the 9 responses that we received, they're all summarized at the top of page 2 of the memorandum. In particular, the interest rates are summarized there on page 2. Wells Fargo provided the lowest interest rate of all the banks that responded, but that interest rate cannot be locked in until just a couple days before closing. So you would be floating with the market with that Wells Fargo interest rate. Perfect. There you go. Additionally, the Wells Fargo interest rate is subject to change after closing if there's a change in federal tax law. Wells Fargo would want to be made whole for any difference that they're receiving in their interest rate or their net interest rate because of a loss or a decrease in their tax exemption that they're able to take advantage of. The next two lowest interest rates.
Hold on, does it work the other way if there's an
No, sir. No, sir.
Well, actually, the law right now is they would have an advantage if the tax bill went through. They would earn more money.
And you would pay more interest. So the way it works right now is they offered an indicative rate of a 217. Again, that's not going to be able to be set until right before closing. But let's say right before closing it was a 217, and then down the road the maximum corporate tax rate was reduced. Wells Fargo is getting less benefit from their tax exempt interest rate.
Oh, okay.
Right, because they're paying a lower tax rate, they get less benefit, and so to maintain their after-tax yield of a 217, they would pass on a higher interest rate to you all.
What do you think that the tax rate might be? I mean,
If you got that answer, you won't be doing what you're doing.
I won't be heading back to Charlotte today.
I mean, what I'm saying is it's not going to go up 2 or 3% or anything like that. You wouldn't think.
Cool. Who knows?
I honestly don't know.
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have the opportunity to bail out if we don't like it?
Well, under the Wells Fargo option, you would have the ability to prepay it, and we're going to get to that in a second. You would have the ability to prepay it, but it's what is called a make-whole call, which basically eliminates any benefit of refinancing for economic purposes. You could still pay it off, but you would have to pay Wells Fargo the difference between the current market interest rate in which you refinanced and today's market. So,
are you saying that if the tax situation changes after we close on this bond issue, that we're obligated to make Wells Fargo whole?
through a change in the interest rate, yes,
Let's
sir.
say it
Let me
changes-
just jump to the chase. We're not recommending you move forward with Wells Fargo.
Oh, okay. All right.
We've got some better options here, so I just,
all right. Okay.
I just didn't
Go
want you
ahead
to
and throw
see
them in the
that.
trash and let's get on to something worthwhile.
That's right. So I just didn't want you to see the lower interest rate and ask why we're not recommending that. So the next lowest interest rate is Pinnacle Public Finance. They offered a 2.22% interest rate. That's fixed through maturity of February 1 of 2028. When they submitted that interest rate, they did not have full credit approval at that time. Since then, we have spoken with them. They've gone through their credit approval process, and they have approved the county's credit, subject to proper documentation, which is going to be the case for any of these banks. We have to make sure we document it properly, or else that credit approval isn't going to hold. So that Pinnacle Public Finance rate of a 2.22%, that's held firm through closing, and that's going to be fixed through the life of the bond issue, not subject to change. We do have the ability to prepay that interest rate after February 1 of 2022. So before February 1 of 2022, we're not able to prepay it, but after that, we can pay it off at par, no penalty. So fair amount of flexibility there with the prepayment provision. The second lowest, or the next lowest interest rate was BB&T at a 2.3%. Again, you're fully credit approved with BB&T, fixed through final maturity of February 1 of 2028. That rate is held firm through closing. With BB&T, they gave you an option for prepayment. You could prepay it at any time with a 1% penalty, or you could choose to have it non-prepayable for the first half of the loan and then prepayable with no penalty for the second half of the loan. Very similar to what Pinnacle Public Finance offered. So when we take Wells Fargo out of the mix because of what we've talked about, we've compared the Pinnacle and BB&T bids on page 4. And just cut to the chase, line 28 of this chart, in the current market, we're estimating that Pinnacle Public Finance would produce about $147,000 of savings, which is about $13,000 per year. BB&T, with that slightly higher interest rate, is about $129,000, or about $11,000 to $12,000 per year. Both of these options are above 3% net present value savings. And what I mean by that is that's GFOA has come out and they have a best practice that a reasonable target to consider for refinancing is 3% net present value savings or higher. So both of these are certainly above that 3% threshold and are producing about, in Pinnacle's case, about $13,000 of annual savings for you all. So we kind of meet that baseline GFOA LGC threshold of 3%. It's about $13,000 per year, about $147,000 in the aggregate. We will not be able to lock in these savings completely until after we subscribe for our escrow securities. And so let me just take a second. I'm just going to get a little more detail than we talked about, but I do think it's important. The 2008 bonds that we're refinancing, we sold those in the public markets to bondholders. When we sold those bonds to bondholders, much like we would tell Pinnacle or BB&T, we said we will agree to a non-prepayment period for 10 years. So we can't take that bond away from them until the call date or the prepayment date of February 1 of 2018. We're obviously not there yet. We're in April or May now of 2017. But that doesn't mean we can't accomplish the refinancing. It just means that we have to do what we call an advance refunding, which you're allowed to do one time for every tax-exempt bond issue. And so what we'll do is we'll issue these bonds if you choose to move forward with either Pinnacle or BB&T, and we will take that money at closing and we will invest it, or we will put it into an escrow account where an escrow agent, in this case U.S. Bank, will hold those funds. They will invest them on the county's behalf, and we are restricted to investing in Treasury securities, so U.S. Treasuries.
You're going to get them zipped.
Yeah, you're not making a lot there.
You're not making money.
But U.S. Bank will hold those Treasury securities on behalf of the town and make the payments to bondholders through February 1 of through the county, for the county through February 1 of 2018. On February 1 of 2018, they will pay off the bonds. They will redeem the bonds, and those bonds will be out of the market. From the county's perspective, when you close this bond issue and you deposit those Treasury securities with the escrow agent, your obligation is complete. You no longer have an obligation to those 2008 bondholders. It's just technically we can't take them away until February 1 of 2018. So the one thing left that could change these savings numbers is we cannot purchase those Treasury securities or put in an offer to purchase those Treasury securities until after we get local government commission approval in June. We don't want to agree to purchase those Treasury securities and something happen through one of the subsequent approvals and we're not able to purchase them, then we're in a bind. So the interest rate on the bonds is locked in. That's the biggest portion of the savings. That's the biggest driver of the savings. But we would wait until after local government commission approval to go out and purchase those U.S. Treasury bonds for the escrow account.
This is similar to the way you refunded the school bond previously. We did a couple years ago, same way.
It's the exact same.
There was an escrow that did that.
But I did just want to clarify that I didn't want you to see the $147,000, and if that changes a little bit between now and closing, I didn't want that to catch you off guard. So that's the one piece that's not going to be locked in. But in talking with county staff and bond counsel, based upon these proposals, we would recommend moving forward with Pinnacle Public Finance at this point in time. They're the lowest interest rate. You do have prepayment flexibility, and they've locked it. You're fully credit approved at this point, and you're able to lock in that interest rate through closing, and it's not subject to change after.
And all costs associated with this refinancing are included in this, so it's net. The savings are net of all of that.
Yeah, the 147,000 factors in the cost of putting the transaction into place.
On Pinnacle, you said we could prepay with no penalty?
After February 1 of '22, yes, sir, that's right.
I
You
got
can
you.
pay it off, you can pay it off in whole, on any date. Yeah, in whole, at any time or on any date with no penalty after February 1 of 2022. The one note I would make about that is if you partially prepay, if you don't pay it off in full, you can do that one time per year on a payment date. And there's a minimum prepayment of $250,000, and there would be a small $500 reamortization fee. That's the only exception there.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Comments? Basically, you're looking at the 5-year period on the prepayment.
For non-callable, yes, sir.
Okay, you've heard the comments by Davenport and our county staff. There's no other questions. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second.
That being Pinnacle.
Yes.
Okay. So we've got a motion by Commissioner Langley and a second by Commissioner Buzzio. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous. Now, tell me, do we need additional motions or resolutions?
You've got a motion to approve the two resolutions. You have the resolution of the Board of Commissioners of the County of Beaufort, North Carolina, making certain findings of fact regarding the proposed bond issue, and then the bond order authorizing the issuance of not to exceed $3,750,000 general obligation refunding school bonds of the County of Beaufort, North Carolina.
Are you
wanna do those
recommending?
You want them separately?
I think it might be safer to do them
Okay.
separately.
Certainly do.
All right, we entertain a motion to do the first one, which is the resolution making statements of fact concerning the proposed bond issue.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Brinn and a second by
Langley.
Commissioner Langley. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous. Okay. Now we entertain the second motion, being that the bond order authorizes issues not to exceed did I say that wrong? $3,750,000 general obligation refunding school bond of the County of Beaufort, North Carolina.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Brinn, second by Commissioner Buzzio. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous. We got them all covered?
I think that's it.
Good.
I'm not the attorney, but I'm pretty sure that's right.
Somewhere I was reading that Anita had to verify the debt, and you've done that.
She has. That's included. Those are the two items that are included in there, the
All
short
right.
statement of debt and the interest.
Thank you very much.
Thank y'all.
Have a safe trip.
Business.
Okay, and that was item number 9. Now we're going to move to item number 1. That being the animal control purchase. Carney?
Thank you, Chairman and Board, Mr. Manager, for allowing me to present in front of you. I'm requesting on behalf of our Animal Control Division's replacement of one of the vehicles. The vehicle in question is a 2004 Chevrolet. It's currently not running at this time. And I'm sure you have in your packet, we're asking for $32,500 for replacement of the vehicle, for it to be replaced with a 4-wheel drive vehicle, and also a 2,500 or what would be considered a 3/4 ton vehicle for the use that is of two trailers we have in the Animal Control Division.
What you pull those trailers with now?
Right now, trucks borrowed from emergency services or another division to be able to pull them.
How often do you have to use them? I mean, the
It's-
horses and...
It's really up to the cause, but it's not something that happens every week by any means. And Billy, maybe monthly or even bi-monthly as comes in, but it's really at the request of whatever's going on in the county at that time.
think one of the other issues is Billy's not been fully staffed, so he's been able to take his officers and let them move amongst vehicles. This vehicle is not working and is not in a position to be repaired at any effective cost.
I understand that, but my question was, I mean, he was asking for a four-wheel drive. My question was, what have they been doing?
Yes.
I want to know why did
Yes,
why did you need it? That's what, I mean, I know you're understaffed with vehicles, but I was just wondering, we hadn't had a four-wheel drive 250 before up until now. That's what I was trying to clear.
Sure. Commissioner Booth, this request is for a 3/4 ton. The truck we're replacing is a 1/2 ton, but it is a four-wheel drive. It is the only four-wheel drive that Animal Control has, and I know it's not something we would want in every vehicle, but it is good for them to have one quite frequently on rainy days or stormy days. The current 1500s can get stuck just pulling off on the side of the road and have to call for another Animal Control truck to come and move them. So we are asking for the four-wheel drive. It's specifically when we're pulling those trailers up and down paths and things like that.
Is it a vehicle you're going to use every day?
It is going to be utilized every day.
And you said that the half-ton that you got now is not working at all?
It's currently not running.
What's wrong with it?
We really don't know right now. Every time, as Manager Alligood said, he's not been fully staffed, and so they've been trading trucks around. When they've had to use it, about every other time, every 3 times, they've had to put it in the shop, and it's $300 here, $300 there. And so just to move it, I asked him to move it from the front of the building to the back of the building. Just moving it around, I think it cut off on him 4 or 5 times, just trying to get it moved around.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
I have a couple of questions. When was the last time y'all picked up horses?
I would be last year. We
Oh.
were looking at, we're actually looking at some now. Don't make a habit out of it, but it could, the situation comes up there, you could go to a property at 17 or, more.
If you're having to pick up horses, why aren't you charging the owner of the horses?
A lot of times they're just surrendering the horses they can't take care of, and they become aware of them. So they're asking basically for help, and that's what we do.
Why can't we have somebody else that we're giving the horse to come and pick it up?
We don't advertise like that. I see what you're saying. You can leave them on the property, but usually when we're getting them off the property, there's a situation there where they need to be removed.
Where do we take them when we get them off the property?
John Pax let us use this property several times. Mighty Papa Burgers let us use her property. I have to call around and see if it comes to schedule and see who can let us use their property.
It's considered foster areas where those are moved to, who's got available space for
They
temporary
had charged us in the past.
Well, I have a problem with us having to pick up horses. I have a problem with picking up horses, for one thing, because we have had some real disasters in the past with picking up horses. Some really bad things have happened. So I'm watching the picking up the horse thing. Okay, that's all I have.
So move.
Got a motion by Commissioner Booth. Is there a second by Commissioner Buzzio? Any other questions or comments? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? The vote was unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, the next item is the Health Department vehicle purchase. James?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, hope y'all are doing well. I'm going to talk about this car that I need. What's that? Okay. I never planned on asking y'all for a car this year, so it's not in the budget for that reason. However, about a month and a half ago, I got a vehicle that needed to be repaired, and when I sent it in to see how much it would cost, it was almost $9,000. So I asked environmental health folks to look for other options, and they went to the sheriff's department and tried to find a car there, but the cars there would cost almost as much. I didn't send them in for repair estimates, but it would cost as much to get those fixed and for me to use. So I thought, well, instead of $9,000 for a vehicle that has over 177,000 miles on it already, 2008 Charger, that I looked in my budget and see if I could find money to put towards that. So what I did was I found some money that I can move around as a budget reallocation request to pay for the vehicle. It's a four-door sedan for $19,933 is the price of the vehicle. And then with taxes, it comes up to $20,537. So I'm here to ask if I can reallocate those funds in order to go ahead and get the vehicle.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Booth. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Langley. Any discussion?
I've got a couple of questions. Do you use assignments on vehicles to know who's driving the vehicle?
Each person has their vehicle pretty much assigned to them. They usually drive the same vehicle.
This was an assigned vehicle, right?
This is.
Okay. I'm just curious as to how anyone can drive a vehicle to get it into shape that it takes $8,000 to fix it and not have known that something was going downhill.
Well, it's one of these new engines with some kind of a Eco-Flex type.
So the engine blew.
Well, it's not engine blown. It's let me see what the word is called here. Electronic shift module with something connector.
Why aren't we buying plain basic vehicles? Plain Janes?
I'm sure.
Now, I see a lot of county vehicles now that are pretty fancy. I see a lot of city vehicles that are pretty fancy. We need just plain Janes.
James, is this the transmission or the motor?
I think it's part of the motor that converts the how many cylinders are firing it.
So it's the one that shifts from 4 to 6 to 8
Yeah,
and back?
something like that, yeah.
Why we buy something like that? We don't even have an interstate to run it on.
So you can save gas money.
No, that doesn't make sense. You're not making sense.
I don't even know if they make cars without that anymore.
It doesn't make sense. For that kind of a vehicle, you need to be able to drive it at high speeds, and it needs to, the transmission needs to do certain things. And here we are on farm-to-market roads buying a vehicle for interstate traffic. I've got a concern about vehicle purchases from this standpoint, but also I think you need to have a conversation with your employee that this vehicle was assigned to, because they don't know anything about vehicles.
But this was a surplus vehicle in the first place. That's why it's got over 170,000.
But I thought you had it assigned to somebody.
Well, look what time for it to wear
We
out.
got it originally from a surplus vehicle.
75.
You got it from the sheriff's department, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
It will wear out when you
So
got
that
it.
means it had a lot of mileage on it when you got it.
Yes, sir.
Gentlemen, we have a motion on the floor. Any other comment? If not, we'll take a vote. All those in favor of the purchase, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Vote 6-1. Thank you. Okay, we're down to the emergency fire dispatch protocol. Vic?
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Come for you tonight, we're ready to implement the emergency fire dispatch part of the priority dispatch system. As most of you know, have come over and seen how the emergency medical dispatch portion works. That protocol is well paid for itself by increasing the percentage of life saves in this county by, I heard the other night, 30-some%. So, I mean, that along with paramedics and stuff has really made a big difference. The fire piece allows us to have a protocol they go by every time they get that particular type of fire protocol. It brings up they'll pull up the type of incident it is, whether it's a structure fire, industrial plant fire, has material spill or leak, and gives them the same protocol to go by every time so that they don't miss anything. In the 911 world, we're fortunate every now and then to be able to hire someone that can have a little experience and background in the fire service, but not very often. Every now and then you'll find somebody that has a little experience and a little knowledge. So when these people are taking these 911 calls, they've got to have some knowledge or either a protocol that gets them in the right direction so they're getting the right resources every time in a timely manner to ensure the emergency is taken care of. This is a 911 fundable item. 911 fund allows for certain items to be funded. This is one, and the amount of the software, the training, and all the tools that goes with it is $74,151. So I'm asking for permission to move forward with implementing the emergency fire dispatch. Be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Vic, when would this be up and running?
Once we issue the PO, we're probably looking at 6 weeks at a minimum to start the training. Probably looking more, probably 90 days before we get the training scheduled.
And I believe you said it's fully funded by the state.
Through the 911.
No, it's not by the state.
It's by us, the taxpayers, who pay a surcharge every month in our phone bill.
On our phone bill.
Yeah, that's right. But it goes to the 911 board, which issues the money back to the counties for the different things that are fundable.
Can I?
So moved.
Got a motion?
Second.
I have some.
Got a commotion, got a motion by Commissioner Evans. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Buzzio. Nay, Commissioner Richardson.
Okay. Vic, I want to ask you a really embarrassing question. When the $1.8 million was approved for the system, for the transmission system, communication system for the county, I asked the question, are you going to be back for more money, or does this do everything that you need to do to satisfy the fire EMS communications part of this? And your answer was yes. So my question is, why are you back?
Commissioner Richardson, I believe you're speaking about the fire radio system contract.
Yeah.
That's the emergency radio piece. This is the 911 operations within the 911 system. I was on that committee prior to becoming an employee with the sheriff's office. And it ended up being in there kind of the go-to guy along with the manager to see all that happens. That was something that the fire service needed to increase their radio coverage and their paging capabilities. That's the radio transmission piece.
These are two separate items.
This is software that builds protocol that ensures that every taxpayer in this county is getting treated the same every time they call 911. What's that?
EFD was approved in this budget.
Yeah, it was approved in this budget. EFD was. I mean, we had it in the 911 portion of the budget. I haven't brought it to you till now because I've been trying to get most of my people hired so that we didn't have to pay additional money to train a lot of extra people. Because once you go through the initial training, then you have to start paying to train new people. And I want to try to get as many as I could in the first round.
Explain, you say so everybody in this county, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. Yeah.
So everybody in this county is treated the same.
Well,
explain that to me.
Well, if you think about it, if you got 16 different 911 operators, okay, say you've got 2 that have some fire background. They've been trained in different types of fire incidences. When they take that call, they see it differently than a young lady that's come to work for us that has no background or fire training. So that person with training is going to ask some more pertinent questions that's going to get them to where they need to be to get the right resources, where that person that has very little fire training or none may never think to ask that question.
So this is just a template lab.
What's that?
What you're asking for is something, just a template.
Yeah, this is, a template's a good way to put it, but it's a protocol. So if you pick structure fire, it's going to go right through the same questions every time.
Okay. And you have to have this. You just can't tell your operators to do that. This template that you're getting now will do it for them, or is it something that?
No, they're going to do it. They're going to ask the questions. Those of you that have sat in and seen the EMD process, it gives them the question. They go right down it and read every single question. Once they get to a certain point, it gets to a send mode. That's when they dispatch the fire department, EMS, get them rolling. So one of the other telecommunicators behind them gets the signal, they dispatch them. From there, the telecommunicator continues with the process of helping them escape this emergency. and to make sure that other bystanders are safe and kept at a safe distance from the emergency so nobody gets hurt while they're waiting for emergency responders to arrive.
Thank you. This sounds like something you need in downtown Charlotte. But at any rate, how much money is left in the 911 fund when we spend this money?
We would have to go back and get you that number. Any number I gave you would be pulling it right off the top of my head right this minute.
I think it's about 500,000.
Yeah, it was high fives when we looked at it.
Maybe 570.
Yeah, something like that, so.
That's allocated to Beaufort County, but we have to submit.
No, that's not our annual allocation. That's the amount that we have in fund balance.
It's a sinking fund.
Oh, okay, I got
You
it.
pay,
I got it.
yeah, off your phone bill is 69 cents, I think it is, that every month is collected, and then that goes to the sinking fund.
It's currently right now 60 cent per phone every month.
Is it 60?
There was a movement to try to push that up to 70 cent last month, and that was stopped, so, I mean, it's,
There's no point in it.
there's
I mean,
enough money there to do what needs to be done. We just have to use it wisely.
Unless they change the law, we can go to $1. But I was on the board when we reduced it because we were accumulating money, and it was just sitting there doing nothing, and it's better off in the taxpayer's pocket than it is in some sinking fund
I
somewhere.
think it's the state of Florida or somewhere, it's like $3 and something per line.
Just a clarification on that, a couple of years ago, the state took that over. You no longer have
That's right.
control over that.
That's
The
right.
state
We had
is-
control.
Right.
You have to go to the board, but it's still in our sinking fund.
It is money that comes to us, but the state is the one that controls that.
That's
revenue.
correct.
You don't have that local control like
Yeah,
you used
they
to
set
have
up a
that local
board.
control.
Okay, Commissioner Evans?
I've sat in the 911 center with Vic, and again, a lot of things happening in there, and like Vic said, with that protocol, you're asking specific questions. And on the other end of that is it's kicking out on that app on your phone, they can say, male, such and such an age, or the breathing conditions, so nothing gets, I mean, it's in there, and you got a lot of things going on, and this protocol doesn't allow them to miss anything, they just keep clicking away no matter what's happening on, because you're running, what, 4 terminals now?
Yes, sir.
And you're taking care of Bellhaven?
Yes, sir,
Okay.
we are. And Commissioner Evans is exactly right. It gives you the same questions every time. The fire departments spend the money out of their budget to buy that app that's called Active 911. So when this stuff dumps to that, every question we ask shows up on their smartphone. So they get a lot more information pre-arrival, which allows them to be more efficient and safer when they get there.
Now, is this information, when the questions are being asked and this is showing up on the screen, is it the answer being recorded into a database?
Yes, sir.
And we can go back and pull the database up 3 years from now
Yes, sir. I
and
can
tell
run-
what happened?
We can run reports on it. We can look at call answer times. We can look at the types of calls, the numbers of calls for that particular type of incident. We can look at all that stuff.
In fact, that's something that's required in the QA.
That's right.
They have to go back and review a certain number of calls and make sure that the folks are doing it right. That's part of the process in the EMD and the emergency fire dispatch as well.
Yeah, at the state 911 board meeting last Friday, the state board voted unanimously to move forward with tagging onto a bill to require all 911 centers in the state of North Carolina to be emergency medical dispatch trained, the EMD piece that we did last year. I think as things move forward, you'll see it on the fire and the law side. There is already some wording in NFPA that's pushing towards the fire side, but it's not mandatory for the fire side yet. But it's a very good way to do it. Keeping it civilly, it keeps you out of the courthouse because you're doing it the same way for everybody every time.
Mr. Evans?
I think you and I and Brian got to hear some of their success stories last week when we were down, when they had the Fireman's Awards and all that. And you could tell it was an emotional thing when this process does work, the protocol works, and people walk out of the ER alive. I mean, it's incredible what their success stories have been just by this one.
Yeah, your comment, 37%, there was 37 individuals that walked out of the hospital. 37. Okay, is there any other commissioners not had a chance to say anything? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to invite anybody that would still like to come and sit, to come over to 911, make an appointment with me, and we'll set it up so you can see it work.
I'd like to do that. I did it one time, but I'd like to, when you get this new system in, I'd like to see that.
Okay, we're down to item number 4, the fiscal year 16-17 budget amendments. Anita?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've completed an exercise that I go through about this time every year, and that is that I go through a detailed review of every expenditure line item that we have in the county. And the reason I do that is I try to anticipate and estimate where I think we're going to be at the end of the year at June 30th in order to ensure budgetary compliance and to determine whether we need to shift any funds around between any lines or departments. We do need to shift some funds around this year. The main reason that we need to do that is because of Hurricane Matthew. We have approximately $150,000 worth of expenses in the general fund related to Hurricane Matthew that we will not receive the reimbursement from FEMA for approximately 12 to 18 months. The good news is that we're able to cover all these costs with existing appropriations, and there's no need for any additional fund balance appropriation. So I am on page 283 of your agenda book, and you can see I've got listed here all the departments within the county by functional area. And if you see a positive number beside a department, that means that additional funds were needed in that department. And a negative number beside a department means that there was a surplus of funds where I could take money away from that department and give it to the department that was going to have a shortfall. So I'm happy to walk through each of these if you feel that's necessary to kind of let you know the reason. But the main reason, again, that we need funds in certain areas is because of the Hurricane Matthew expenses.
So when do you think we'll get refunded by FEMA? Have you talked with them at all?
I have talked with them a lot, and I hope to get the reimbursement request in the next 2 or 3 weeks. I've met with Lisa Williams. She's wrapping up the reimbursement piece for the debris removal, and we've got all the forced labor accounted for. We are working on capturing some equipment costs that they will allow us to be reimbursed for. But after we get all that done, I hope to have it submitted within the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, after that, it's typically 12 to 18 months before we'll actually see a check back in our hands for that.
Okay.
Can we handle it by us just asking questions of a particular item?
Sure. I have the detail here. If you got a question, we can get back to
Okay,
the detail.
since I'm the chairman, I'll start with the first one.
Yeah, so governing board, that was kind of a
No. I'm just picking out one number on here.
Okay.
Some of them I don't have any problems with.
Some of them were good.
Under public safety, under jail,
Yes.
that 184,000, I believe that's safekeeping primarily.
That is all safekeeping. In fact, we budgeted $135,000, and the way Brian and I built the budget this year is we looked at the historical trends on what we had spent, and that number was $135,000. Now, of course, we didn't anticipate having a hurricane and having an additional $40,000 to $50,000 in inmate safekeeping to cover that time period that we had to evacuate the jail. And then in addition to that, and Charlie can speak to this, I'm sure, better than I can, my understanding is that when the jail gets to a certain level, a certain number of inmates, that anything above that, they then transport the inmates to detention centers around the state. And so, this year it looks like we are trending to spend about $350,000 in inmate safekeeping by the end of the year.
Yep.
Again, a Approximately 50,000 of that is strictly related to Hurricane Matthew that we'll get reimbursed for. We're able to cover that. If you'll look just below the jail in communications, we're able to actually take the money, the $184,425 from communications where they had vacancies, where they had not filled those 3 or 4 EMD positions, and move that money up to the jail to cover those inmate safekeeping fees. Now, had they filled those positions and not had that vacancy and benefit money there to use, we'd be having a different conversation right now. I'd be coming to you tonight and saying, we need to appropriate $200,000 in fund balance to cover this. But, you know, the sheriff's office, they've been great. They've worked very closely with me to scale things back, to try to make it work. It's going to be tight, but Charlie and I and Vic and Lieutenant Brinn, we think we can make it work within the appropriated funds that we have in the current year.
Thank you. Did you want to add anything? I had already, Nita had already answered that question, but I wanted everybody else to hear it.
I got a question.
Okay.
I know Poe Matthew getting blamed for a lot here tonight, and rightfully so. But how long did we have those, if it's up to 350,000, did I hear you correct, 350,000, how long were they in safekeeping?
Well, now, all of the 350 is not, you know,
I know that,
attributable
but how long
to
did we have
Hurricane
people in
Matthew.
safekeeping?
Was it about 12 to 14 days for the hurricane period? Because you have to,
Yeah, that's right.
It was right at 14 days where we didn't, well, 9 full days that we had 0 people in our facility.
That's right.
As soon as they were getting in, we were taking them to other facilities. And then there was about 14 days prior, a week prior to the storm, and then a week after the storm, where it took to get everybody back to where they were originally.
Okay.
We had some people in Foothills, we had some people in Morganton, that they were nice enough to keep our guys a little bit longer, so, because at that point we had in between 20 and 24 people in Manio. Well, Manio shut down, Dare County Jail shut down. So we had to wait for them to open back up before we shifted the 15 or 20 people back to Dare County that they were before.
So it was 14 days.
14 days storm related.
Okay.
But we've had an average, and I'd say average because some days are higher, some days are lower, but we've had an average of about 20 people in a sister jail, not in prison, not in our facility, but in a sister facility, whether it's Pitt County, Pamlico County, Lenore County, Dare County, every day over the course of this year to keep our numbers to the point where we're playing the shell game of what courts we have in and keeping the numbers right in our jail.
Okay.
That answers my question.
I have some questions.
All right. Commissioner.
Let's talk about definition for a minute. Everybody that's in jail is in safekeeping. Okay. Safekeeping, as it's commonly used, is when Gary and I both get arrested, and he's going to turn state's evidence on me. That's not much point in putting both of us in a cell together, okay? Because one of us is not coming out, okay? That's safekeeping when we transfer.
I know which one that'd be.
That's safekeeping when we transfer a prisoner because he can't be in the jail because he's at high risk if he's in our jail. There's a lot of other crimes and things that come into play that's called safekeeping. There's another situation where we transfer prisoners because the jail has reached its capacity and we need to transfer prisoners somewhere else. $50,000 can be accounted for from Hurricane Matthew, and one of the reasons Hurricane Matthew went on so long was we brought the jail up to standard. We did some repairs to the jail, so we kept prisoners out of the jail longer than we needed to, so that the repairs could be made in the jail so that we could stop people from complaining about what was going on in the jail. So that's one of the reasons those were so high. I get the jail report every commissioner's meeting, and I got the jail report for the last commissioner's meeting. Let me give you an example of what's going on, and I think the jail and the sheriff need to tighten up because we're permitted for what, 83 or 85 people in the jail. We had 77 people incarcerated according to this report. There was 18 of those people were out of the county. There was only about 3 or 4 people that were in safekeeping for their own personal safety. They had to be moved somewhere other than the Beaufort County Jail. So we had less prisoners than we were permitted for, but we sent 18 prisoners to another jail. Okay, and then, as the chief deputy just alluded to, you're scrambling, hauling people back and forth so they can be here for a court date or something. All this stuff gets to be expensive. I don't see why 18 people had to be out of the county at $46 a day. You know, that's for us about $1,000 a day that we're paying to keep people out of the county. If half of those people were out of the county, we would only be paying $500. So I think the sheriff can lower this number by better jail management.
You want to comment?
Sure.
Chief?
So you're correct. Safekeeping is a sort of a catch-all number, but that is because that is how we pay for all of those movements. So we say safekeeping to make it more simple for the board to understand where that money is coming from.
Don't make it simple for me to understand, because I understand these things. The rest of the board may not understand this. You need to break your numbers down into truthful numbers instead of using safekeeping as a cover for what you're doing.
If you just excuse me, just to remind the board, we're talking about the budget, and this is a line item, and this is the only, everything goes in that one.
That's
as it relates to safekeeping.
That's correct.
Well, we need to change that because we're not getting accurate numbers when we do it this way. We don't need to be doing this anymore.
Mr. Chairman, can I answer to the running of the jail and the day-to-day numbers, since I was sort of called out on? Our capacity in our jail is 85. That is 85 if the number is absolute perfect. So if you will allow me to simplify that, not just for you, but for the public as well, if we had 85 adult males, that would be our number that we would have for our jail. If there is anything that deviates from that, if we have a 16 or 17-year-old, then that is somebody that we've got to segregate differently and classify differently. If we have one female, then that means that we've got a block that would hold 12 people, that if we have one in there, then that one person is holding 12 spots. Okay? So 85 if things are perfect. Well, we do not live in a perfect world. Okay? So we do the best we can at any given day to try to keep the numbers low to our, what we consider, between Lieutenant Bryan and I, our functional capacity, which is more of 70, 72, 73. That gives us the ability to have what you would refer to as safekeepers, I would refer to as keepaways, which we have plenty of them. If we have 4 or 5 people that are arrested for the same crime, we try to keep those 4 or 5 people away from each other until the district attorney's office and the defense counsels and all of those people can get together and talk, so we don't have the same defendants speaking to each other, even though in our facility it's difficult to control that, because all you have to do is yell loudly from one block to another and you can have a conversation. So sometimes we will actually, if we have 4 or 5 people, we will send them to another facility because it's a little bit more difficult to yell to Pitt County than it would be to yell to the next block. So we have a lot of things that go on that we try to do to make the system better. That does cost, but we're trying to do the best we can with what we have. With courts that come up, if we know that we're going to have an administrative session of Superior Court, which happens about once a month, we know that we're going to be bringing incarcerated people from all across the state in for that 1 week of court. So if our numbers are already 70, 74, 75, and we can expect another 25, then the week or two before we are going to lower the population of our jail. So that week prior, when we're getting back up to 74 or 75, it's for people that have court that week. So we may have 10, 15, maybe even 20 people in a sister jail because their court date is December 25th. And I've never seen court run on Christmas Day, but that's where all of the undocketed cases in Superior Court are listed. So we are constantly moving people around trying to keep the facility as safe as we can be for our employees, because bad things happen when we have too many people in a jail. But we're also trying to keep it safe for the inmates that we have, and we're also trying to make it as efficient as we can for the district attorney and for the court system. So those are the reasons that we're doing the things that we do. Furthermore, if a judge issues a bond and the judge says that a suspect, a defendant, needs to be in jail, then we need to provide a jail space for them. And I've said to this board, and I've said to the sheriff, and I've said to other agencies, if it is determined that we have somebody in Beaufort County that needs to be incarcerated, then we need to incarcerate them. So that means if I have to use
the old slogan from the Highway Patrol and say that the Beaufort County Jail was from Murphy to Manio, then that's what we're going to do to get the job done that's necessary for the court system. So I thank you for your time, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to,
But let me just respond a second.
we've spent enough time on that.
Mr. Chairman, this is an important item, and the deputy has made some statements, and I am trying to get the jail costs lowered. Apparently, you are not.
This right now, we've had a discussion. We're going to get back to the agenda item, which is on the budget.
So you're cutting me off.
I'm cutting you off on the jail. Now, if you've got a question on any of these other items, then that's fine.
Why are you limiting me to the jail?
We've got a time constraint.
There's no other item in here that's this big. This is $400,000 item that's rolling on.
Commissioner Evans.
As promised a couple of months ago, I did go down to the jail, only when Lieutenant Bryant said she would let me out. But I went in and stayed 3 hours, and I think a lot of folks need to go down there and see what these guys do daily. I mean, go down there, and he did a great job. Chief Rose did a great job of explaining it. All the situations that are thrown at them. I mean, I sit there and ask questions for 2 hours. We spent an hour in the jail. What a nightmare. How you folks do what y'all do, I don't know. But again, we've got people in that jail, God forbid, are innocent. And to keep those people separated under those conditions, and I'm talking about cramped conditions, is incredible to me, and I think they deserve a certain amount of respect, because that is a horrible job down there that we ask these deputies to do. And I think if you go back and do the research compared to other counties, these people are extremely efficient. And I think the judges are efficient. But they keep throwing challenges from hurricanes to whatnot. Drugs have gone up, and everything, God knows what, everything else that comes along. But I was thoroughly impressed with the people down there, and the jail is a terrible situation. And I think these guys need to be applauded for what they're doing. Are we as efficient as some folks like to be? Hell no, not in that kind of environment that they're having to work in. You told me not to go, and I went anyway.
Yeah, I did.
And I made it out somehow. But it's a situation, until we work through this thing, I take my hat off to you and Lieutenant Bryant and her crew. And these sheriffs, I mean, they're down there moving people, trying to make this work. Yes, it costs some money, but the jail is what it is. And again, you get in there and you throw another curve, you have a female come in. When I was there, they brought in a female, now it shifts again, right? Go down there in the room that the attorneys come in and try to meet with their client. About the size of this right here. So there's a lot of obstacles these guys go through, so I think that let's give them a benefit of the doubt and let's move on.
Done good, John Boehner.
Okay, getting back to the budget amendments. Any other questions on any other item on the sheet? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Booth. Is there a second? Commissioner Brinn seconds.
I got one question after I made my motion now.
Yes.
Some of this money is going to be reimbursed anyway by FEMA. Is that correct?
We certainly hope so. We certainly hope the majority of it that we submit to
I
them.
still stand on my motion now.
Okay. Any other comment? All right, all those in favor of the budget amendment, raise your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you. We're down to 7 o'clock. We're down to our break, so we'll be back in 10 minutes.
Brendan and I use it in transit. I just got used to it.
I think we have everyone back. So we'll continue with items for decision. Number 5.
Chairman, if I could just interrupt for a minute.
Yes.
We do need to ask about the Board of Education being videotaped on Wednesday. You
No.
workshops, we did videotape it last year, but I didn't know if you wanted to do it this year as well.
No.
The joint meeting that's coming up on
Oh,
Wednesday.
that's a waste.
Well, it should be videotaped, because you got some hot issues that are going to be discussed. Board brought up last year this building of the new school building.
think it need to be taped for an hour. That's just me.
We riding the horse together.
It don't matter to me one way or the other. If school board wants to tape it, let them tape it.
We pay for that, and we pay for
Oh, we do?
as well.
Well, I don't want to tape then.
We're taping the budget meetings that we have.
Workshops, yes, sir.
So this is an individual meeting with the school board.
Correct.
All right, well, stalemate.
I guess you had to find a vote.
Okay. Who wants to make a motion?
I move that we take the meeting.
Got a motion on the floor to take the meeting. Is there a second? It dies.
Just say $800.
But just for clarification, because Commissioner Brinn asked that, the Board of Education meetings are taped, and you do pay for that.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. I didn't know that. I thought they paid it out of their money.
No.
Okay, we're down to item number 5. The building inspection supervisor is required to attain the minimum level certification. Commissioner Richardson.
Well, I attended the code board meeting last week that had to do with our building inspector providing information that led to the demolition of the hospital in Belhaven. And at that particular meeting, one of the first question that the chairman asked is, are any of the supervisors of the code official, do they have any building inspection licenses at all? And of course, the answer to that was no. And discussions that I've had with the investigators up there, they feel like one of the ways to stop, and I won't use the word corruption, because that's what this was, corruption within these ranks is to have more than one person licensed within the chain of command. That way you have people that are checking each other. And for those of you that don't know, the code board decided that what Brandon Hayes did, he was not authorized to do under the laws of the state of North Carolina. He did not have the qualifications and the license that he needed in order to do the kind of inspection that he did to, as the judge put it, condemn the hospital. And regardless of what people try to tell you, I was sitting in the court for the trial. The judge relied on that report, and the judge refused to entertain affidavits to attack Brandon Hayes' report. Led to the demolition of the hospital. This is a serious event. And what this means is, if you own property in Beaufort County, and there are people that don't like you, you can have your house demolished while you're on vacation. Because that's essentially what happened here with an illegal investigation, an illegal report that should never have been written to begin with, collusion among the county attorney and the attorney for the opposing side, collusion among our officials, resulted in the loss of a $6 million building for Beaufort County. So I'm making my motion again. This board has refused to take a position on whether what the county officials did was right, to admonish them in any way. So I'm making my motion again in order to stop corruption in Beaufort County, that the supervisor of the building code officials obtain the minimum level of licensure, so that we have 2 licenses to lose when people go do things that are illegal.
Got a motion? Is there a second? Okay, it dies of a second. I'm going to allow our county manager to speak on this agenda item.
I will need to answer on this agenda item, Mr. Chairman. If you're trying to shut me down like you've been doing, then you need to understand that this is a fair playing field, and when accusations are made, I don't mind him answering, but we need to be able to answer each other.
Well, this is not a courtroom, but I'm going to allow him to respond since you made an acquisition.
And you're not going to allow me to respond?
I'll allow you to respond one time, and that'll be the end of it.
Members of the board, I appreciate the opportunity to speak to this again. And I'd like to make sure that information that is put out there is correct information. So first of all, let me preface my comments by saying that I have had none conversations with the investigator from the state of North Carolina or anyone from the state regarding this matter, okay? I want that to be very clear because I've been accused of having conversations, and I have not had any conversations. My conversations have been with Mr. Hayes and with county staff. Throughout this investigation, our staff has conducted themselves with integrity and in a manner required of an investigation. All questions asked by the investigator were answered truthfully and to the best of the respondent's knowledge. The investigator was given free access to anything he requested, and no attempts were made to influence the investigation of this matter. However, it's rather disappointing to me as a manager and looking after my staff that this is not the approach that's been taken by a commissioner on this board. It is my understanding that although he did not submit or sign the complaint filed with the state, he made phone calls to the investigator. He submitted a video to the investigator that was taken in 2014, a few months after the hospital was closed, when the utilities were still connected. And I'm not sure why you would submit such a video, except in the conclusion that there was an attempt to represent that that was the condition of the hospital at the time the inspection was done. And I'd like to show to you what the interior of that hospital looked like. It'll connect. This one, look.
There you go.
I can't, hang on one second. You know how to get this connect. Keep hitting connect. All right, great, thank you. So two things I'd like to share with you. This is a report that was done by the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the rural development folks. This report was done in April 25th, or this was the letter that was written April 25th, 2016. And anytime there's a request to do a community facilities project, there's required to be a professional, the state engineer, the rural development state engineer is required to, or the architect, is required to look at that and make a recommendation on it. The state engineer, Mr. Brian Noel, who was a professional engineer, came down and inspected that facility. And he did that as part of this process. And you'll see in that second paragraph, it says, in my professional opinion, the condition of this facility has deteriorated to the point that renovations are not economically feasible. Roof failures, water infiltration concerns, floor, structural failures, mold, environmental concerns. Significant roof leaks have allowed for water infiltration throughout the building. Significant levels of mold growth were prevalent. The growth appeared to be above the ceiling, drop ceiling, within walls, and generally on all exposed surfaces. Some areas were contaminated to a point that occupants should reference the proper personal protective equipment needed prior to additional exposure. So he was saying, don't go in there without a mask. This level of contamination represents a significant health concern and would require significant remediation and would represent a significant long-term liability. Now, this is from Brian Noel, who is a professional engineer. This is pictures he took of the roof failures and water infiltration concerns on the roof. There's another picture. There's an area where it's holding water. These are the water infiltration concerns. And he notes on here that overall flashing in this area is failing, so wherever there was flashing, water was entering through the roof and into the facility. Here he notes the same thing, and he says down here that overall flashing in this area was failing or non-existent. So water was just simply going straight in. Here's the floor that he writes, the structural failure. You can see on the left, there's a hole through there. You can see the sagging of that floor right there on the right, where it is just essentially collapsed. You can see it pulling away and falling away there, and that's looking down in through to the area. So the above photographs are a small sample showing the general condition of the existing building. One section of the building utilized crawl space design with wood subfloors. The overall subflooring and floor joist appear to be failing in several areas. And there's the mold and environmental concerns. You see the mold on the right. You see the hospital, the walls that it is infiltrated into. And his comment here are, the above photos are a small sample showing the general condition of the existing building. The majority of the building has had significant long-term water infiltration, and this has resulted in rampant ground mold on all exposed surfaces, including within walls and above drop ceilings. There's been a representation that that hospital was not in bad shape. And I think it's clear that it was. I think there's a professional engineer who did that and said there was, and that was in April. Our folks looked at it in December. That was in April. So there's a significant time period in which there was additional water infiltration. Now, that's really not the issue. There was a complaint that was alleged against our chief building inspector that he did things that were inappropriate. It was submitted by a sitting town commissioner from Belhaven. My belief is that there was some significant assistance in writing that. There were 17 allegations in that complaint. Now, the investigation has not been finalized, and that report has not been publicly issued, but none of those 17 allegations were found by the investigator to be valid. None of those allegations. Zero. The only thing that, in reviewing the case, the investigator from the state alleged was that Mr. Hayes practiced code enforcement outside of his certification level due to the size of the building in violation of General Statute 143, 151.13. And Mr. Hayes stated specifically to the investigator that he understood that he did not have a required level 3 certification to inspect such a building, but that is not what he had done, but that his actions were related to providing a notice of defects as he is required to do by North Carolina General Statute 153A 365. In response to that, Mr. Hayes referenced to the investigator the definition of code enforcement in North Carolina General Statute 143, 151.83, and nowhere in that definition is notice of defects defined as code enforcement. Mr. Hayes also stated to the investigator that under the investigator's assertion, if he saw a glaring safety defect in a building of a certain size, he would not be able to make notice to the owner of that defect, but would then have to go and find an inspector who could do that. Again, Mr. Hayes knew exactly what he was doing. He was issuing a notice of defects to the owner. He had been requested to do that by the owner, which is another piece of the statute that says if you have a complaint, you are bound to do that, and that is what he did. The investigator said, I don't think you have the authority to do that under your certification. Well, that is what is in contention. Now, again, the final report has not been released on that, and Mr. Hayes has the opportunity to go and hear his case in front of the court, in front of the code council. They allow him that opportunity to say, look, here's the way the statute reads, and this is the way I interpret it. And for the investigator to say, here's the statute, and here's how it reads, and here's how I interpret it. And let the board rule on the definition of that defects, notice of defects definition. The investigator has offered to settle and resolve that case by having Mr. Hayes retake the admin and law class, and then he suggested to him, just go ahead and get your level 3 building certification so you don't ever have to worry about this again. Now, that's a conversation between Mr. Hayes and the investigator. My understanding, that's probably what he's going to do. But I would tell you that if, as part of that, the investigator says that nothing in that settlement is taken or construed as an admission or concession of any violation of law or any liability or any wrongdoing. What he's saying is, we have a debate about whether you read the statute this way and the way I read the statute. And what we're willing to do to settle this thing is for you to just retake the class and then go ahead and take the Building 3 certification so you don't ever have to worry about this. Mr. Hayes holds Building 3 level certifications in plumbing. He doesn't in building. He had them previously, but we don't have that many facilities where he would use that. But he's going to do that so that it will settle. Now, again, that is the state investigator saying, in order to settle this, we'll do this. Now, if you're standing somewhere and you do something absolutely wrong and there's not a debate about it, then my impression is the state's going to say, no, we're not going to settle anything with you. If you did wrong and we know you did wrong, then here's the way it is. The state has said, essentially, the way I read that is there's a difference of opinion as to what that is, and Mr. Hayes has shown them in the code that what he did is not defined as code enforcement. So that's where we are. And it's my belief that Mr. Hayes is going to just settle that and say, look, fine, I'm not going to argue with it about it. And the reason I believe that he's not going to do that is because the last time our building inspectors went in front of the code council, they held up a building permit because, first of all, the person didn't apply for a building permit, and they went in and did work, and then they encroached upon a septic field that had a notice of failure related to it. And the statutes require that there be a valid permit before you can issue a valid septic permit before you can issue a building permit. Well, our folks didn't issue the building permit because they said it's not valid. You've got a notice of violation on it. Well, we went in front of the code council because the owner challenged that and said that's not right. So they went in front of the code council, and the code council looked at it and said, no, you've got to issue the building permit because of a small interpretation of a sentence in there, and we know that essentially there's going to be an issue, but let the health department and the septic tank folks worry about that. So essentially we've put a homeowner in a situation where, because that board said no, you've got to issue the permit instead of fixing the problem, you issue the permit, they do their thing, and then they're now going to get shut down because of the septic issue. So what I'm saying to you is, we don't have a lot of faith in the code board and their interpretation of that. So I think that's why Mr. Hayes has said, look, I'm not going to argue with you. If that's the way you want me to do this, that's the way we'll do it from now on. However, that's not the way it's defined in the statutes as he reads them and as we read them. So that is where this thing stands. We have done what we were supposed to do. We were within where we believe to be right, and if we were absolutely wrong, then the state would not have said, we'll come to an agreement to settle the case. So, and then I'd also like to address that, and we've gone over this time and time again. The complaint that was brought against the hospital board, the group, was a single cause of action for breach of fiduciary duty. They essentially brought a complaint that the directors of the LLC, the Pantego Creek LLC, had not done their due diligence and provided the information that they were supposed to provide to their members before their members voted to not sell the hospital and then voted to demolish it. That complaint was reviewed by the court, and according to the transcript of the court ruled that the plaintiffs have wholly failed to establish any likelihood of success on the merits, and the evidence before the court at this stage of the proceeding shows that the defendants acted carefully and consciously in discharge of their duties as managers of Pantego Creek at all times. and that the weight of the defendant's evidence, however, simply overwhelms the plaintiff's complaint. Not only have the majority of the Pantigga Creek's members said that they believe defendants fully and honestly informed them regarding the transaction, they have clearly stated that they do not consider the alleged misrepresentation material to their discussions to vote against acquiring and operating the hospital, and it would not have changed their vote. In the face of defendant's evidence, plaintiffs simply have not established a likelihood of being able to prove that the defendants made material misrepresentations in breach of their fiduciary responsibilities, and the motion is denied. It has nothing to do with the county doing its job and issuing a notice that there were defects in that building that were of safety concerns. The members of that organization, it was a facility that they owned, and they voted to demolish it, and that is what occurred. We had no influence over that vote by them. We simply did a notice of defects to the owner to say, these are issues with the building, and they need to be corrected before you'd be able to open that building back up. So I thank you for the opportunity to try to clear some of that up. Thank you.
Okay, I understood exactly what the manager said. I'm right with him on everything that he said. This is a difference of opinion about the way the game is played. The rural development letter that was written by the engineer, I'm a professional engineer too. I've been in that hospital about the same time he was in that hospital. 95% of that hospital was in good shape. The only part of the floor that could have fell in was the 20% that was built in 1949, and that was falling in, and that was in bad condition. But rural development, even in the face of the letter that the manager cited, was willing to give the Pungo Medical Center a $6 million loan to rehab the hospital because mildew and mold is not structural. The structural integrity of the building was totally sound. As a matter of fact, a backhoe sat on the floor to demolish the building. So we know exactly what was going on there. So in spite of that, that takes all those arguments about mold and mildew and all that stuff are gone because they were going to give us the loan. We had the letter. I've seen the letter. It said as soon as you get title to the building, then we'll give you the money to open a hospital there, $6 million. There was, at the time that the building inspector went and did his so-called inspection, which now we found out was not really an inspection, he could not do that under the law. I was at the building code meeting. They didn't say maybe or what if. They said this guy wasn't licensed to do what he did. So we can throw out all the other stuff that's told about him making false statements. They did not want to consider that when they got to that point. There was a temporary restraining order that was in force. I sat in the room with Judge Grant when he issued the order. And we were supposed to have a status quo until the final decision was to be made, which was held in business court in Raleigh. That is status quo. Nobody was supposed to tear the building down anymore because they already had the backhoe sitting there. They'd torn part of the building down. Nobody was supposed to go on the property to change anything. Nobody was supposed to involve government in a civil matter at all, ever either. This building inspector had already issued the permits that were necessary to demolish the building. So if you're demolishing a building, why do you need to be in the building writing up an affidavit to be used in court to make the judge believe something? And the judge believed it because I was sitting in court when the judge exhorted these people for having foresight to have a building inspector come and look at this. The judge refused affidavits saying the building inspector wasn't supposed to be there because there was a temporary restraining order. He violated Judge Grant's restraining order that he wasn't supposed to go down there and do inspections or do anything. You can holler all you want to about public safety, but when he's already issued the paperwork to demolish the building, the demolish equipment is on the site demolishing the building, and there's a fence around it, the building inspector had no business being there. Beaufort County did a political favor for the people that wanted to demolish the hospital. And they wrote a letter that the judge referred to over and over and over, and it was a big part of his final decision, because I sat in court and heard him say it, and I also read the court documents of that were the clerk produced, and a lot of stuff was left out of it that he said when he did that. Guess what? He's not supposed to do that. So we've got all kinds of problems that involve corrupt behavior in the demolition of this hospital. Building inspectors are not supposed to go out and write affidavits for court actions. They are not qualified. This is what you hire engineers to do, and they put their name on the line, not building inspectors. Our building inspector had no business being on this property because it was being demolished and it was properly made safe while it was doing this. And there was a restraining order that said everybody stay away from this place. Our staff, this staff, backed up by these commissioners, did a political favor for some buddies.
That's your opinion only.
Oh, we're going to see how this plays out. That's my opinion right now. We're going to see how it plays out, because there's more to this than what I'm telling you about today. So our staff should stay out of these civil matters. When you get into a civil matter and there's a lawsuit and a temporary restraining order, we don't need to be sending county employees down to get involved in this to help the other side, because you're going to get called on it every time you do it, and we are never going to agree that this wasn't a corrupt activity.
Commissioner Brinn, did you?
I don't need to
I'm going to
say
say
anything.
something. This is a classic example of fake news. If you read the testimony, and that's all you can go by, you've been in court. It's the testimony, the written testimony issued by the judge that counts. And half the stuff, or three-quarters of stuff we've heard now, is not in this testimony. As the county manager said, fiduciary responsibility was the complaint. And the judge ruled that the managers of the LLC performed their duty. And the judge also went on to, and that was the whole purpose of the case, but he did address some issues that were raised by the plaintiff. And one was the USDA letter. And the judge said, by the way, that wasn't a loan. That was a commitment to provide a loan if certain things were met. And you didn't meet them. And then there's another section in here where the judge says, I've been trying to get money for 2.5 years. You haven't been able to get money. So when you read this testimony, you may sit in a court case, maybe you don't understand, but this is what counts. And this is interesting reading. Our employees did nothing wrong. And throw around terminology of corruption, that person should be ashamed of themselves. Our employees did nothing wrong. And I compliment our county manager for the statements he got up and he said and backed his people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Evans?
At this point, I'd like to see the table for about 1.5 years, but I know we can't do that. But I don't understand why, with all the challenges that we currently have, why are we looking back? With the way it is in this county and a lot of rural counties, we need to start looking forward. This is a situation that's done. We got a lot of good employees. Why can't we put a positive spin on this thing? We're trying to get industry to come to this area, but yet we're videoing for people to look at us and say, we got collusion going on and it's really bad. We got a great county, with a lot of good people. It's time to stop looking back. Let's look forward and see if we can get this county moving and take care of our taxpayers. But it's time. It's time to stop the politics. It's time to stop the micromanaging. It's time to provide some leadership for this county. Period. End of story. Thank you.
Well, since you pointed at me, I wasn't saying anything. I'm gonna let y'all just fight. But my dear friend Commissioner Richardson said all of us were corrupt. God knows I hadn't done nothing about that hospital down there. But I will say this. There's two things that at this present time that divide us as a county. One of them is that river. Another one is this hospital. It's time to move on. We have spent enough time. Even if all parties are guilty, only thing you can do now is find where the bricks are and buy them. There's nothing else going to happen to that hospital. But as long as we sit here, Mr. Richardson, as much as I respect your abilities and your knowledge, as long as we sit here and talk about this hospital and our employees, we're not going to be able to get much done. I'm sorry that it was destroyed. But I still feel the same way. If it was my house and I wanted to burn it down, I would have been able to burn my house down. That's the way I feel. But we need to move on, and let's start healing this process so we got bigger and better things to do for this community. We can't save the hospital now. It's gone. But we can save our friendship if we start tonight and just say, let's let it go and move forward.
Commissioner Booth, that was well stated. And we need to just evolve to the point where we really don't attack our own employees. That is just not good, period. Even if the employee is wrong, we should not get out and televise how wrong an employee is. Let's just do what needs to be done and simply move on, if we have the evidence to do that. But beyond that, we have got to get to the point where we strictly take care of business and do everything from a factual basis, and not he said, she said, they said, and with all the faceless, nameless people, because you can't do anything with that type of information. And so I really hope and pray that this is the last time that we talk about this particular agenda item, because I don't really feel that this gentleman is crooked or purposely did anything wrong, and I think we just simply need to move on.
I'd like to just remind everyone that the letter has not been issued yet, and the finals have not been issued, so we're not sure exactly if anything will change from what we've heard or not. I would just like to say that I think that what happened here was exactly what we expect. We expect the government to react to a request, and we had a request from the owners of the hospital due to safety for somebody to go through there from the county and point out any safety concerns that were there, and that's exactly what was done. You know, at the end of the day, the hospital has been demolished. It was voted on by the majority of the members of the LLC. And as far as I'm concerned, it's water over the dam. I think it's unfair to attack county employees the way that one of our commissioners has done. I think that our county employees every day try to do the best job that they can, and I salute them. And I would just say continue to do that. I think our county manager has done his job, and I would ask that we move on and try not to bring this back up. I would say that if there's going to be anything else attacked, then we will do it next time. We're going to go into a closed session. This is the last time that we're going to try to do this in public session. If you want to say there's something criminal going on, then we'll go in closed session and you can lay it on the line. But I think that enough has been said tonight. So we're going to move down to item number 7, the disposition of real property, lot number 2 in the Washington Beaufort County Industrial Park. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is lot number 2 in the industrial park. As you recall, at a regular meeting on April the 3rd, the board received a written offer from the Community 100 to purchase that lot for $38,549 of that $7,000 an acre for the 5.507 acre tract. You remember they are looking to construct an industry-ready building on that site in partnership with the county. The county the board at that time proposed to accept that, and then under the upset offer or the negotiated offer and upset bid process as allowed by GS 168-269. That notice was that upset notice bid was advertised, and the 10-day process ran. There were no upset bids received. So it's our recommendation to you that you accept the offer from the Committee 100 in the amount of $38,549 for lot number 2 in the industrial park, and direct the county manager and the county attorney to complete the sale of the property.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Brinn, a second by Commissioner Buzzio. All those in favor of the motion? All those opposed? 6-1. Okay, item number 8 is Economic Development Agreement with the Committee 100. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, at your April 3rd regular meeting, you approved drafting a public-private partnership funding and profit-sharing agreement with this Committee of 100 regarding the construction of this industry-rated building on Lot Number 2. The agreement was based on the terms presented and approved by this board at that meeting. You have a copy of that agreement attached. It has been reviewed by the county attorney and the Committee 100 attorney, and we would seek your approval to have the chairman sign that agreement.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Commissioner Brinn. Is there a second by Commissioner Evans? Any discussion?
I have a question. On page 390, item 5, go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just below the capital letters committee, says in arriving at said total cost, any contribution from county shall not be taken into account. In other words, any county contribution shall not be deducted from the total cost. That's totally unnecessary in this, because I think we're gagging at a gnat here, because the first part of this thing can lead to troubles in interpretation. In arriving at the total cost, any contribution from county shall not be taken into account? Really? And we're putting money into this and we're supposed to share, so how are you going to compute this? Then it goes on to say, in other words, I think both of those should just be taken out of this, because one of them counters the other.
I think what they're trying to clarify is that you don't get to pull our money out when you're looking at the total cost.
Yeah, but he says it makes these statements shall not be taken into account, period. And then he comes behind this and says in brackets, and arriving at the total cost, any contribution from the county, oh, wait a minute. In other words, any county contribution shall not be deducted from the total cost. That would be normal business practice. So why are we gagging at this gnat?
I think they're trying to be clear in their understanding of it.
But when you say a positive and a negative, you're not being clear, and that's what's done here. He said negative, it's not going to be taken into account. Then he says, let me interpret this for you. In other words, it will be taken into account. So what does it say? The answer is nothing.
It says, in arriving at the total cost, any contributions to the county will not be taken into account. In other words, the county's contributions will not be deducted from the total cost. So he's saying you don't take them into account.
But there's a
what
period.
What that means is you don't take them out.
There's a period at the end of that first sentence, so it stands on its own as a sentence, and it says the county contributions are not going to be taken into account. And then you go to a lower level of understanding by bracketing this thing and saying, well, let me help you with this. You got a plus and a minus. This is poorly written.
Address any of that.
I think it says what it intended to say.
To the same thing, plus and minus. That's bad language.
Question.
All right, I have a question. All those in favor of the agreement, raise your right hand. Those opposed, vote 6-1. I'm sorry, I left out item number 6. Our vice chairman pointed that out. So let's go to item number 6, the Hospital Authority Board request. Commissioner Richardson.
Page 384.
385.
Yeah, 385. That's the same request that I had last week from the hospital board, and that is, one of the reasons for this request is the trust fund money that's in the hospital trust fund is county money. It belongs to the people of Beaufort County. It is the only thing that this county has to make sure that we keep a hospital up there, because Vidant has a 30-year lease. They can walk from that lease anytime they want to with 1 year's notice. And when the present administration finishes reworking Obamacare, there's no telling how this is going to play out. So if Vidant gives us a 1 year's notice that they're going to abandon their lease and leave the hospital, which they'll start doing that right away, at that point, how does the county keep a hospital up there? It's our property. If the trust fund that's there for the hospital we can use that for seed money, is what we have always talked about, in order to get another operator in there. Whether it's a lease or we sell it or whatever we do with it, it's still seed money for the hospital, and it doesn't cost the taxpayers anything. This money was put up by Vidant as a part of the deal to take care of trailing liabilities. Those trailing liabilities will not end until the last baby that was born in there is 21 years old. So it has a way to run, okay? And we don't know what the rest of these liabilities are. And I've repeatedly asked the Authority Board for information. They have not produced the information. So I'm just going to read what I'm requesting as a motion. This is a motion that the Hospital Authority Board, of which Commissioner Buzzio is the chairman, the chairman of our board serves as Commissioner Waters, and Jerry Langley serves on that board also. One, a report of, and this will take a minute, a report on outstanding unresolved liabilities of the Beaufort County Hospital Retirement Program. How much has been paid to date? What is the estimated outstanding liability? Have any participants been identified? Have all participants been identified and located? Provide a definition of the time period that will be covered by the Authority Board audit. Is this audit intended to be the final audit before the closing of the trust fund? Who is to do the audit? What other funds has the Authority Board spent other than the $1.8 million to CMS? How much of the $1.8 million may have been collected by Vidant? How do we know this amount is correct? How much of the principal and interest has been repaid by Vidant to the Authority Board? Has the Authority Board made a demand for payment? Do you have projections of future liabilities that may still be levied against the trust fund? What is the possibility of future lawsuits? Provide the Board of Commissioners the minutes and documents distributed to the Hospital Authority Board members covering the period of time since the last audit. Request the Beaufort County Hospital Authority Board to provide the commissioners with the number of jobs at the Beaufort County Hospital at the end of each year during the past 7 years. A request is also made for the latest bank statements for the Hospital Authority Board in the May agenda book. This request was given to the Hospital Authority Board chairman. That goes, I see that you typed this exactly like I gave it to you, but that's fine. We're requesting the bank statements from the Hospital Authority Board because they're going to tell a story about what the Authority Board is doing with the money. This is, I'm making this request on behalf of the Beaufort County Commissioners because it's the commissioners that are responsible to the taxpayers ultimately for the use of this money. There is also the possibility, and this is being kept a deep secret by the Authority Board, that they may want to dissolve that board and dump the money into the county treasury at this year. Whenever they do that, these other questions and liabilities are still out there. We have a right as taxpayers to have answers to these things. Commissioner Buzzio is chairman of that board, and he is dragging his feet as slowly as he possibly can. That is a motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second to the motion? It dies for lack of motion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Buzzio.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned at the last meeting, based upon council recommendation, I do not have the authority to release this information. Only my full board has that authority.
I laugh out loud,
excuse me,
Buzzio. I laugh out loud.
Good.
That is a false statement.
Commissioner Richardson.
When people come before the public and make false statements, they should be tagged for that.
Please allow him to respond.
As I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, based upon, we have our own council and hospital authority board. At our next meeting, we will bring all these issues up, as I mentioned to the board previously, and we'll have a discussion on these line items, and we'll make that information, whatever decision the board makes. I will tell you this. We've had discussions with an outside auditing firm who will come in and audit the books from 2015 to the present time. No voting member of that board has received any money from the fund since 2015, since I became chairman of that board. Again, as I mentioned in May, once we have our next meeting, these issues will be discussed. And if there is a decision made by that board to recommend abolishment of that authority, the recommendation will probably be made that the money be used for health needs in Beaufort County.
Okay, down to item number 10, the Old Ford EMS rental agreement. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. You have attached a rental agreement between Old Ford Fire Department Incorporated and the county for its use of facilities to house an EMS unit. That agreement is a 2-year term at $800 a month. It is similar to the agreements we have in place with the town of Bath and with the Bellhaven Fire Department for housing EMS units. That agreement's been reviewed by the county attorney and also been reviewed and approved by the Old Ford Fire Department Board of Directors. We request your approval and authorization for the chairman to sign.
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Langley. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Brinn. Questions, comments? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed? Vote 6-1. Number 11 is the bid and offer to purchase property. David?
This is, again, Mr. Langston made this offer on this particular piece of property. As you will recall, several meetings ago, he bought 2 pieces of property. He's closed on those. They were also on 5th Street. This is 710 West 5th Street. And he's offered $750 for this property. He's been notified that it will come on tonight for your decision as to whether to accept his offer. I have the deposit check for $37.50, and we would then, assuming you approve it, we'd advertise it for 10 days for any upset bids.
Okay, you've heard the report and the offer. Do I have a motion to accept the offer?
So moved.
Got a motion by Commissioner Buzzio to accept the offer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Brinn. Questions, comments? If none, all those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous? Or was anybody opposed? I think I saw unanimous. All right, item number 12 is the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council local match for the fiscal year 17 and 18. I believe that's you, Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you're aware, the North Carolina Department of Public Safety partners with JCPCs to reduce and prevent juvenile crime. Division of Adult Corrections, Juvenile Justice allocates funding each year to the local JCPCs. Those funds require a 10% match by the county so they can be drawn down. This morning at a meeting with the JCPC, they proposed their they presented their allocation report to the county. DPS is proposing funding $152,389, which would require a local match of $15,239. You have the allocation request, and you have a description of the programs that the JCPC has approved for funding. And they are recommending that, historically, you have approved this prior to the budget. So we brought it to you for your approval in providing the local match of $15,239 in the 17-18 fiscal year budget.
So moved.
Okay, got a motion by Commissioner Langley, second by Commissioner Booth. Any questions? All those in favor of the vote or motion, raise your right hand. Unanimous. Thank you. Vice Chairman Langley has asked if we would consider changing our meeting for Monday, June the 5th, to possibly the next Monday night, which would be the 12th. Could we accommodate Commissioner Langley's request?
I
don't have a problem.
Okay, and Brian, you do?
No, what's the date he wants?
The 12th.
Yeah.
And Brian, does that present a problem for the budget process that we're going through or not?
We're supposed to approve the budget on the 5th.
That is the public hearing night for for the that's the public, I'm sorry, that's the public hearing tonight.
Still can have that. You still can have a public hearing.
You got plenty of time to announce the public hearing, stay within the law.
We can adjust that if we need to.
All of them will be here for the public hearing. You still have a public hearing, can't you?
I don't have to be here for the public hearing if you want to have it.
If, that would be our first choice. If we run into a problem with booking, we're going to the Superior Courtroom.
Yeah, I already got.
How about Tuesday night, the
13th.
the 6th, June the 6th? Would that,
That's fine.
could that be an alternative if there's a?
I won't be here the whole week. No.
You won't be here the whole week, okay.
How about the 13th of June?
Do it. I mean, there's 6 of us here. We ain't gonna vote on nothing that night, I hope.
You're gonna pass the budget that night anyway.
So just leave it where it is?
Don't know.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, right now, it's public hearing plus our regular meeting, right?
Yes.
It is. But we do have to have the budget passed by, June 30th.
Yeah, we have you coming back in. Let me get to the budget stuff.
How about moving?
It's on the 19th, coming back in on the 19th and doing that.
Special board to adopt.
Yeah. So you got a special call board meeting on the 19th to adopt the budget. You've got the public hearing on the 5th. So that would give you a week in between if you did it on the 12th.
So we could still do it. It's just a matter of whether the Superior Courtroom is correct, which chances is, I'm assuming at nights maybe slim.
Depends on if they have grant.
Trial week.
Okay.
If it's admin, you should be fine.
Why don't we try that, and then if we have to regroup, we could still have the public meeting and then have the commissioners meeting here on the 12th. Is that, or just go ahead and have everything on that night with 6 of us?
That's up to the board.
Okay.
You know, I don't mind moving it to accommodate Jerry. You've got plenty of time to advertise. If you didn't have time to advertise, it'd be a different situation. But you got plenty of time to advertise and stay within the law, and we have always accommodated commissioners. I hope you accommodate me when my time comes, because I've sure accommodated all of you.
I think every, the 12th. Let's go with the 12th, okay? I think every time it's come up, we've tried to accommodate whoever it is, even if it's Commissioner Richardson.
That's right, even me.
Yeah,
Just to clarify, you want the public hearing and the regular meeting on the 12th?
on the 12th. We'll try to do everything on the 12th.
Yeah, that'll be better.
Now, does it present a problem as it relates to the Pantigga?
Just pushes us back a week.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're down to closed session.
Whoa, you got to do my thing that I pulled.
Audit contract.
Oh, that's right, audit contract. What,
I have one question. How many times has this firm done our audit?
2 times. This will be the 3rd.
This will be the last, then, I mean, the way we've been doing it, right? Okay, that's all I have.
okay, we still need to approve it. Can I have a motion? Would you like to make the motion to approve that?
I don't mind making a motion to approve it. I move we approve the audit firm.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor, raise your hand. Unanimous. Okay. Now, have I missed anything else? Everybody shaking their heads. And to closed session, Katie, will you read us in the closed session?
Motion to go into closed session under NC General Statute 143-318-11A3 to consult with an attorney employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the attorney and the public body for a discussion of existing litigation, Berry v. Board of Commissioners, 17 CBS 330.
John Bennett. So moved.
Got a motion to go?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. Unanimous. All right. At this time, we'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we you know, have our council, county attorney, reach out to Nelson Mullins, et cetera, whatever the rest of the names are, to retain their services, to represent us in the lawsuit that's been filed against the county commissioners and the county by the Good Government Committee.
So moved.
Within that motion, you said Nelson Mullins. I thought that was the one that I objected to.
Well, that's a pretty good-sized law firm. You
No, but
you don't necessarily have to use her.
Yeah, but I want my objection, I want to note my objection.
Noted.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the floor. Now, we'll have any discussion.
As part of that motion, Marty is not here, but you will need to allocate some funding to that because we wouldn't be able to enter into a contract with someone without funding.
How much? Get started.
$30,000.
How about 50?
I'd pull $50,000 out of fund balance.
I don't want to spend nothing. Let's go up there and say guilty.
I think you ought to put down a minor amount to get things started until you negotiate.
I'll amend my motion to
10.
include $50,000.
Good. Oh.
Will you agree to that, Commissioner
Yes.
Brinn? Okay. So the motion stands now.
Question now, here, Chairman.
Question?
Because the attorney said there may be a conflict of interest. Does he need to contact the attorney, or does Brian need to contact our attorney? Okay.
But I'd just like to point out that $50,000 is way too much money. You can get this thing started for negotiations and get somebody on for about 10, then you can come back and you can raise this number if you need to. I know that 10 won't do it. I know that's small. But you start off with a big number, you're just going to get bigger numbers down the road from the lawyers.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, we're not going to tell them we've got we have $50,000 allocated, and they'll work out whatever they
You
have to
just
work
did.
out.
This is a public meeting, Commissioner. You can't cover this stuff up.
I'm not covering it.
But you keep trying to do. That's why you're being sued.
Excuse me. Would you get some professionalism for once?
No, I'm not. I'm behaving just like I am.
Gentlemen, we got a motion and a second.
I want to say something.
All right.
It's gonna cost probably $50,000 or more before it's all said and done. Go ahead and put the money in there. You ain't got to spend it until they tell us to. But at least it'll be there. You won't have to wait 30 days to a meeting to allocate some money. So $50,000 is a good figure.
Good point.
Any other comments?
Yes. I want to comment on the $50,000.
You already did.
It is extremely bad judgment to allocate this amount of money up front on a lawsuit like this. You need to start off low. You can always go up. If you start out high, these expenses are just going to go higher. This is a misuse of county funds. You're showing your hand real early in the game.
We're not
And
going
it's
to
not-
tell them we're putting $50,000 aside.
You really don't understand what Commissioner Buzzio don't understand, do you? This is a public meeting. You're on film. You can't cover this up. This is why you're being sued, because you don't have the answers to these things.
You're gonna put $50,000 in that rag you call a newspaper is what you're gonna do.
Guys, we've got a motion.
You're misusing the county's money.
The
We're
motion.
right, and I agree with that.
The motion is to do the budget amendment. We're not spending that at this point in time. All those in favor of the motion, raise your right hand. All those opposed?
I'm opposed.
Votes were 6-1.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Got a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, raise your right hand.